place what the effect of this spreading tsunami wave is. Obviously, the Pacific is a vast area dotted with many, many islands, many of them low-lying. And obviously the Taiwan Tsunami Warning Center has advised people that the tsunami wave may wash over some of these low-lying islands. It's very hard to say at this stage exactly how it's going to affect each place as the wave spreads across the Pacific. I just want to actually bring your attention to some news that is just coming in, though. You mentioned earlier about Japan's nuclear plants. We are hearing from Kyodo News Agency that Japan has declared an atomic power emergency at one of its plants, but they're saying there is no radiation leak as such right at this stage. I mean, I think this relates to the Fukushima nuclear plant, where they alerted us earlier to an emergency core cooling unit being activated. Obviously, there's no power in a lot of places in Japan right now, and that's probably why that emergency core cooling unit has been activated.
Stephanie Scowen, thanks very much for the update for now. Well, Russia has also been issued with a tsunami alert. The Russian President Dmitry Medvedev has offered the Japanese government his country's assistance in the wake of the earthquake. Al Jazeera's Niamh Barker joins us now live from Moscow. Niamh, what measures can you tell us is the government taking in anticipation for the tsunami reaching the Kamchatka region?
Well, Gita, for the Russians, the worst already appears to have passed. Although saying that, the tsunami warning is still in place. Those areas at risk are the islands of the Kuril chains off the coast of Hokkaido and also the Sakhalin Island, which is a major oil refining part of Russia. 11,000 have been evacuated from the Kuril Island chain, better known more recently because of the ongoing territorial dispute between Russia and Japan. On the most southerly island, waves of up to 3 meters high were reported there. And if we consider that the population of the islands is around 19,000, almost more than half of the population have already been airlifted to safer ground. Better news, though, for those parts of Russia ringing the Sea of Okhotsk and the Sea of Japan, Kamchatka Peninsula that juts into the Pacific. No major reports of waves being significant than usual there, and certainly no reports of damage. The Russian president has already eased the work of Russian seismologists who, after the Asian tsunami, developed Russia's very first early warning tsunami system that seems to have been attributed with making sure that the bulk of those Russians who may have been at risk were moved from areas that could have been hit by significant waves.
Niamh Barker in Moscow. Thanks very much, Niamh. Keala Kelly is a Hawaiian journalist and a filmmaker. She's now with us on the line as we continue to look at pictures we got a little earlier on showing the extent, the devastation of these tidal waves in the area surrounding the northeastern coast of Japan. Waves that have swept everything in its path, from ships to cars and in some instances buildings as well. Keala Kelly in Hawaii. There was an early alert for Hawaii following this massive 8.9 earthquake. What kind of evacuation efforts are now underway?
They're evacuating people from the coastal areas, the beaches, and places like Waikiki. They are evacuating tourists to the 6th floor of the hotels, nothing lower than the 6th floor.
So where are people able to go in order to get some kind of shelter?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part.
You said they were evacuating some people to certain higher buildings. Where else are people able to go to get enough shelter to protect themselves from any oncoming tidal waves in the next couple of hours?
Yeah, well, anybody who lives near the water has been evacuated, and they've been evacuating for at least 2 or 3 hours, so it's enough time for people to get to higher land. And as far as tourist areas like Waikiki and other resort areas that are near beaches, they've by now gotten everybody way above anything, any elevation that they could be, that would be dangerous for them to be at.
Describe to us the kind of atmosphere that has been surrounding this as people anxiously wait to see what is going to happen.
Yeah, I'm sure. As you can imagine, people have been, last year we had a similar thing happen after an earthquake in Chile. And we had many, many hours to prepare, and everybody was evacuated, and then there was no tsunami. The sense now is that this is actually going to happen. So, it's been throughout the Argo as opposed to just certain areas being evacuated. So, and the tsunami alarms are going off at least once an hour, and they'll start going off every half an hour, probably within the next 45 minutes.
Keala Kelly, a Hawaiian journalist and filmmaker, thank you very much for joining us and sharing your thoughts with us on this. Let's now speak to Gavin Blair. He's a freelance journalist in Tokyo. Tell us where you are and where you were when the earthquake hit, what kind of effect it created around you.
Yeah.
Gavin Blair, can you hear me?
First, the room started to shake very gently. Did you get any of that?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
So I was on the ground floor of a building in central Tokyo, which began to shake fairly gently at first, and then more and more vigorously, and then the whole building started to shake, and some people were running out into the streets, some people were going under tables. It's certainly the strongest earthquake I've felt in the almost 14 years I've been here in Japan, and it went on for a lot longer than I've ever experienced, and the aftershocks were still hitting us 3 hours later, and we're a couple of 100 kilometers away from the epicenter.
And the Prime Minister has told the Japanese people that they need to be vigilant. How worried are people that there will be considerable aftershocks that might take place in the coming hours?
It's always a danger. There were actually 2 large earthquakes earlier this week, and there were predictions of seismic activity after the quake in Christchurch recently. On the other hand, people are fairly well drilled here with exercises, and I actually saw some kids going under tables, which is exactly what they're supposed to do in these situations. So everybody does practice earthquake drills. Obviously, it's one of the most earthquake-prone countries in the world. On the plus side, the buildings are very well developed here in terms of quake-proof, and that will obviously have saved a lot of lives.
And of course, the government has been saying that it will take all the necessary emergency measures in order to minimize any damage. What kind of measures have been taken so far?
The government kind of has to say that. I mean, there's nothing obviously you can really do with a tsunami. They try to evacuate people as quickly as possible. They do get the warnings out quickly. They've sent the self-defense force, which is in effect the army, here up to the hardest hit areas. There's a limit to what they can really do other than prevent panic.
Gavin Blair joining us from Tokyo. Thank you very much indeed. Well, it is just over 5 hours since one of the biggest earthquakes ever recorded struck the northeastern coast of Japan. Tsunami waves have crashed ashore on Japan's main Honshu island. They're also rippling across the Pacific Ocean, endangering dozens of countries in their path. 6 hours after the earthquake, the tsunami waves were expected to hit Papua Guinea and approach Alaska. After 9 hours, northern Australia and the west coast of Canada were expected to feel the effects of the earthquake. After 12 hours, waves were due to hit southern California and New Zealand, which has now given the all clear. And after 18 to 21 hours, thousands of kilometers away on the west coast of South America, the tsunami effects are expected to be felt as well. In all, 53 countries have been alerted. Al Jazeera senior meteorologist Steph Golter joins us now on the set to talk about this. How do you explain, Steph, the sheer scale of this earthquake and the fact that it has affected or will somehow affect 53 countries in all?
Well, there's nothing to slow it down. That's the thing about waves. Like normally if you have a little toy, you push it along a desk, it will eventually stop. Friction will slow it down. But in the sea, there's not a great deal there. So the waves will just keep going. And also these waves travel incredibly fast. Like we're talking about 12 hours to get to the North Island of New Zealand. Imagine if you were flying by plane from Japan to New Zealand. It actually wouldn't take much shorter than that. They're going incredibly fast. And the reason for that is because they've got a very long wavelength. And so they're essentially quite like shallow waves. So they're working as if they're just on the beach rippling along. So that's why they're kind of going so fast and why they get there so quickly. But things that we have to watch out for and things that concern us are There's a network of buoys all the way across the Pacific, and these buoys will measure tiny little motions in the sea surface to tell where the tsunami is and where it's going. But in the middle of the Pacific, it's very, very deep, and so they actually won't move very much. There won't be a great deal of a wave there. It's only when they get near the shore that the amplitude will suddenly increase, and you'll see just how big a wave you've got to deal with. So over the Pacific, there's not a great deal to see. So we're very lucky that we've got these buoys that can measure where it is now, where it's going, and hopefully just how bad it's going to be.
So the further away these waves do travel, the intensity is more likely than not to become smaller. But nonetheless, I mean, it is expected to reach as far away places as Chile.
That's right. And we're not expecting, it does ease a little bit the further it goes, but not as much as you might expect, because there's nothing to slow it down. So yes, it may well get all the way to Chile. But also remember the tsunami that happened in Indonesia. That went a long way towards the west. It went across Sri Lanka, it went across the Maldives, it even hit the eastern coast of Africa. These things travel a massive distance.
And how do you explain the fact that there hasn't been such a strong earthquake in Japan in many, many years, though they've had their fair share of earthquakes over the years?
What's been happening is we've got the Pacific plate and the Philippine plate, which are to the east of Japan, and these two plates are trying to slide underneath the Eurasian plate, and as they do so, it kind of pulls some of the Eurasian plate down with it, and eventually the pressure gets too much and it has to flick back into shape, and it's this flicking motion that causes the tsunami that we've seen, and it's this kind of subduction earthquake that causes the worst type of tsunami.
So the bending or the breaking of one of those four tectonic plates on which Japan actually lies.
One of them has finally just gone, that's enough, the pressure's too much, and has kicked it back. So that's what's caused our tsunami.
How soon do you expect landfall to be made in places like Indonesia, like the Philippines and other countries?
Well, we're seeing we should get to the North Island of New Zealand in 12 hours. So between now and then, it will slowly start reaching the smaller islands. And the problems with getting to those little islands is that it's very difficult to actually evacuate them because they're low-lying sand. It's difficult to actually get there to give them a warning. And so it's quite difficult to get your message across. That's the problem with some of these islands.
And Steph, as we continue to speak, we're looking at some of the latest pictures that we've been getting from the region. Not exactly sure where these pictures are coming from, presumably somewhere off the northeastern coast of Japan, but it does show the extent, obviously, of the damage also, and how fast these waves have been moving.
And another thing, and the power of them as well. Another thing to notice is that these houses here are pretty strong houses. They're made of brick. If you go to some of the small little Indonesian islands, often they're not made of brick. They are just huts, and those will have no defence at all from this kind of a wave.
Steph Golter, thanks very much. And before we move on, let's just remind you now quickly of events in Japan and the Asia-Pacific region. A massive earthquake has shattered the northeastern part of the country. The sheer force of nature is on full display. Massive cracks are opened up, whole streets are being left in pieces, houses have collapsed into giant holes in the earth. The giant earthquake caused 10-meter-high tsunami waves. They crashed ashore on Japan's main Honshu Island. They're also rippling all across the Pacific Ocean, threatening as far away as Peru in South America. In all, 53 countries were alerted, but Russia, Australia and New Zealand have been given the all clear. All along the northeastern coast of Japan's main Honshu Island, home to Tokyo and other major cities, tsunami waves